The night my twin brother told me his secret, the entire world seemed to stop breathing. I could tell from the moment I stepped through the front door that something inside him had already broken. Our parents had just left that morning for a conference in Chicago, leaving the house quiet, too quiet for a home that usually vibrated with arguments, footsteps, and classical music Mom insisted we keep playing. Only 12 hours had passed, but already the place felt hollow, like the walls were waiting for the next disaster. His name is Aiden. My name is Elias. We were born 3 minutes apart, and even though we looked almost identical, our lives never ran parallel. Aiden was the bright one, full of energy, a star athlete who always seemed to shine even in dim rooms. I was quieter, more introspective, the one who stayed up late reading instead of sneaking out to parties. But despite our differences, there had always been a thread binding us, some invisible thing that made me feel his emotions before he spoke them. And that night, that thread trembled. Aiden was sitting in the living room when I found him, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on the floor. He didn't look up when I came in, didn't joke, didn't smile, didn't ask why I was home early. He was motionless, too still for someone who'd always been restless. "Hey," I called quietly. No answer. I sat beside him, my backpack still slung over one shoulder. "What's wrong?" He swallowed, throat working like it hurt to breathe. "I need to tell you something," he whispered. The silence stretched. I waited. Our house smelled like dinner we hadn't eaten, the refrigerator hummed, and somewhere outside a dog barked, normal life continuing, refusing to acknowledge whatever storm sat between us. "You're scaring me," I said. "I'm scared too." His voice cracked, and suddenly I understood. Whatever he was holding, it was too heavy for him alone. Aiden lifted his head, eyes glassy. I'm not who they think I am." He paused, studying my face like he feared the reaction more than the confession itself. "I'm gay." The words trembled out of him like they'd been caged for years. My breath caught, not because I was shocked, not really. Some part of me had known all along. It was like knowing your own heartbeat without ever really listening to it. But hearing him say it, hearing how afraid he was, it hurt. He kept talking, words tumbling out fast, brittle. "I didn't want to tell you like this. I thought maybe I could wait or just never say anything. But yesterday," he sucked in air, "Dad found messages on my phone with a guy. We were supposed to meet next week." I froze. "Dad? Strict? Traditional? Stubborn? A man who believed things were either right or wrong, with no space for gray." "He didn't say anything," Aiden continued. "Just looked at me, like he already knew. And then this morning, he and Mom left like nothing happened. Nothing. No anger. No conversation. Just silence." "What did he say?" I asked. "That we'd talk when they came back." Aiden swallowed hard. "I don't think it's gonna be good." We sat there, the truth hanging between us like a fragile chandelier that could shatter with the slightest movement. I reached out and squeezed his arm. "I'm here," I said. His shoulders shook. It felt strange, because our parents had raised us together, taught us the same lessons, but they'd raised him in a different prison than mine. A prison where he had to hide his heart from the people who were supposed to protect it. "How long have you known?" I asked. Aiden stared at the wall for a long moment. "Since middle school. Maybe earlier." "And you never told me?" "I wanted to." He gave a hollow laugh. "But every time I tried, I thought about what would happen after. I couldn't handle losing everyone. I thought if I just kept quiet, if I stayed the perfect son, it would go away." He looked at me, eyes filled with shame. "It didn't." My chest ached. People always said twins were mirrors, but no one ever talked about what happened when one reflection shattered. "You haven't lost me," I said softly. His eyes widened, and something inside him broke free, a sob half caught in his throat. "I'm sorry," he said. I feel so alone." "You're not," I repeated. He leaned into me, forehead against my shoulder, shoulders shaking like he'd been holding back tears for years. I wrapped my arms around him, trying to steady his breathing, feeling how small he seemed despite the muscles he built from years of sports. After a while, he pulled away, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "There's more," he whispered. My stomach twisted. "Okay." He hesitated. I think I'm in love." I blinked. "With the guy you were messaging?" He nodded. "What's his name?" "Caleb." The name hung in the air, unfamiliar, yet important. "He goes to our college," Aiden said. "We met in psychology class last semester. At first, we were just working on projects together. But then, he pressed his lips together. He made me feel safe, seen." His voice softened, like I didn't have to pretend anymore. I didn't know Caleb, but suddenly, I wanted to thank him. "Does he know how you feel?" Aiden nodded. "He feels the same. So are you guys together?" He hesitated. "I don't know. Not officially. We wanted to wait. I wasn't ready for the world to see. And now," he shook his head. "I don't know if I'll ever get the chance." I didn't know what to say. I wanted to promise him everything would be okay. But we both knew that wasn't guaranteed. Dad's silence terrified us more than any screaming could have. "So," I said slowly, "what do you want to do?" Aiden laughed bitterly. "What can I do? If I tell them the truth, I risk losing them. If I hide, I lose myself." He stood, pacing. "I've played the perfect son my whole life. I did everything Dad asked. Sports, grades, smiles. And none of it was real. None of it was me." He looked at me. "I'm tired. I'm just so tired." I watched him, handsome, athletic, so full of life, and wondered how I'd missed the shadows in him. The weight he carried had been invisible until now. "You deserve to be you," I whispered. He pressed his lips together, eyes flickering. "Do I? Because I don't think they'll see it that way." He wasn't wrong. Our parents loved order, certainty. They wanted a life that fit neatly inside boxes. But a heart wasn't a box. And Aiden's heart had no intention of staying closed anymore. I stood and walked to him. "Let's talk to them when they get back," I said. His laugh was small. "Maybe." We spent the rest of the night sitting in his room, talking about everything we'd never said before. Fear, love, loneliness, hope. For the first time, I learned who my brother really was. Not the athlete. Not the golden boy. But the human beneath the armor. That night, he showed me messages from Caleb, sweet, tender words that read like a secret diary. Pictures of them studying together, smiling, leaning close. A video of them laughing in a coffee shop. I could see it. The real him. The part he'd buried. He wasn't confused. He wasn't broken. He was just in love. And terrified of the price. Before bed, he said quietly, "I don't know what's going to happen, but whatever it is, I just hope I don't lose you." "You won't," I promised. I wish promises could heal everything. I wish love was always enough. But life rarely gave us easy endings. And in the days that followed, everything would be tested. Because secrets never stay silent for long. Not when the truth is finally fighting to breathe. The morning after his confession, the house felt different. It wasn't louder or quieter. The sound level hadn't changed, but the silence now carried weight. I could feel it pressing on the walls, the floors, the spaces between us. Aiden didn't wake until almost noon, which was unusual. He was always the first one up, always the one who made coffee before anyone asked. Today I let him sleep. I sat in the kitchen, staring at the mug between my hands. The sunlight streamed through the window, golden and warm, refusing to match the tension inside me. I kept thinking about Dad, about the look Aiden said he'd seen on his face. A look that wasn't shock, or anger, or sadness. Just knowing. And that scared me more than anything. When Aiden finally dragged himself into the kitchen, hair messy, eyes tired, he looked like he hadn't slept at all. "Coffee?" I asked. He nodded silently and dropped into the chair across from me. I slid the mug toward him. His fingers shook slightly when he picked it up. Neither of us spoke. Words suddenly felt small, incapable of carrying what needed to be said. Finally, he sighed. "I don't know what to do today." "You don't have to decide right now," I replied. He shook his head. "But I feel like I do. If Dad already knows, then every hour I don't talk to him feels like I'm lying." "You're not lying," I said gently. "You're protecting yourself." He stared into his coffee. "I've spent so long protecting myself that I don't even know who I am without fear. I wanted to fix it. I wanted to tell him that everything would be fine, that the people who raised us would choose love over judgment. But I didn't know that. And lying would only make it worse. So instead I said, 1 step at a time." He nodded, though his eyes still wandered, like he was searching for a version of himself he'd lost somewhere along the way. After breakfast, or what passed for one, Aiden retreated to his room. I heard him pacing. He was either rehearsing something or trying to breathe. Maybe both. My phone buzzed. A text message. Unknown number. "Hey, is Aiden okay? Is Caleb?" My heart jumped. I typed back quickly. "This is his brother. He told me everything last night. He's struggling." There was a pause. Then, "Can I come over? He hasn't answered my texts. I'm worried." I looked toward the hallway. Aiden needed someone who understood. Someone who wasn't just offering support but living the same quiet battlefield. "Yeah, come. He's here." I sent the address. When I told Aiden, he froze. "Here? He's coming here. If you don't want him to, I can tell him to go home." He opened his mouth, then closed it. I do want to see him. His breath shook. "I'm scared. I'll be right here," I said. He nodded. 15 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Aiden's footsteps stopped in the hallway. I went to the door and pulled it open. Caleb stood outside, sunlight framing him like he'd stepped out of a memory. He was about our age. Maybe 20, tall, lean, with soft brown eyes that reminded me of calm water on a still day. He wore jeans and a simple t-shirt, no pretense, just open sincerity. "Elias?" he asked. I nodded. "You must be Caleb." He offered a small, grateful smile before stepping inside. The quiet of the house closed around us. Aiden was standing at the edge of the hallway, shoulders stiff, like a deer ready to bolt. When Caleb saw him, his entire expression shifted. Open, aching, relieved. "Aiden," he breathed. And Aiden just stood there, frozen, until Caleb moved slowly toward him. He didn't touch him at first, just looked, really looked, like he was scanning his face for damage. "You okay?" Caleb whispered. Aiden's breath hitched. Then he nodded, though it wasn't convincing. Caleb raised a hand. Aiden didn't flinch. Their fingers touched. It was the smallest gesture, gentle, uncertain, but it felt like a declaration. I stepped back, giving them space. They moved into the living room, sitting beside each other, knees brushing. I lingered in the doorway, close enough to hear but far enough not to intrude. Aiden told him everything again, about Dad, about the silence, about the fear. The words came easier this time, maybe because Caleb already understood. Caleb listened without interrupting, his hand never leaving Aiden's. "That look he gave you," Caleb murmured. "You're sure it wasn't just surprise?" "No," Aiden said firmly. "It was recognition, like he'd already decided something before the conversation even started." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Well, no matter what happens, you don't have to face it alone." Aiden's shoulders slumped with relief. "You say that now," he whispered. "But what if I fall apart?" Caleb's eyes softened. "Then I'll be right there to help you stand again." The room felt too small for everything inside it. Hope. Fear. Love. They stayed like that for nearly an hour, talking in quiet voices that rose and fell like waves. Eventually, their words faded into silence, replaced by the calmness of simply existing together. There was something sacred in the stillness, in knowing that two people could hold each other's truths without flinching. But life didn't allow quiet for long. Around mid-afternoon, the phone rang. Aiden stiffened instantly. I checked the caller ID. "Mom." I answered, forcing my voice steady. "Hi. Hi, sweetheart," she said. There was noise behind her, airport chatter, boarding calls. "We're coming home early." My blood ran cold. "Why?" There was a pause. "We need to talk as a family." The sentence dropped like a stone. When I hung up, Aiden could already see the answer on my face. His color drained. Caleb's hand clasped his tighter. "They know," Aiden whispered. I nodded slowly. "They'll be here tonight." His chest rose and fell too fast. "I'm not ready." Caleb pulled him close, hand on his back. "You don't have to be. You just have to breathe." Aiden closed his eyes. But his voice trembled. "What if they make me leave?" I had no good answer. None of us did. Evening arrived with a strange finality. The sky darkened early, clouds rolling in like they'd been called. The kitchen lights stayed on, warming the walls that suddenly felt unfamiliar. We sat together in the living room, Aiden, pale and quiet, Caleb beside him, me across from them trying to hold the pieces. When headlights cut across the window, Aiden flinched. The front door opened a moment later. Our parents stepped inside. Dad's face was unreadable. Mom looked tense but composed. Their eyes landed on Aiden. Then on Caleb. Then back on their son. Aiden stood slowly. He didn't speak. Didn't move. Dad set his bag down. The sound echoed, sharp, final. Mom stepped forward first. "Aiden," she said softly, "we need to talk. A beat." Aiden's voice barely rose above a whisper. "I know," and the storm finally broke. The room felt smaller, walls tightening, ceiling pressing down. Mom glanced nervously toward Caleb, as if she wasn't sure what his presence meant, or whether she should acknowledge him at all. "Why don't we all sit?" she suggested. No one moved. Caleb stood first, steady but respectful. "I'm Caleb," he said quietly. I'm Aiden's friend. Dad's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker, barely visible, of understanding. Not acceptance. Just recognition. We'll speak with our son first, Dad said. Privately. Aiden tensed. No, he whispered. I want them here. Dad's jaw tightened. This is a family matter. Aiden's voice wavered. They're my family too. The room froze. I felt something shift. Not enough to break, but enough to crack. Caleb didn't speak. He just placed his hand gently on the small of Aiden's back. It wasn't a display. Just grounding, like he was saying I'm here without words. Dad's gaze narrowed at the gesture. Mom stepped in quickly, trying to soften the silence. Aiden. Sweetheart, we just want to understand. That's what I'm trying to do too, Aiden said, louder this time. His voice shook, but there was steel under it. I could feel my pulse hammering. It was the first time I'd ever seen my brother choose himself over peace. Dad finally exhaled, long and measured. Fine. Sit. We sat, 4 of us on the couch and chairs, while Caleb remained just slightly behind Aiden. He didn't sit until Aiden did, as though he were waiting for permission, or fear. Dad spoke first. I saw the messages, he said, voice low but controlled. I didn't read them all. I read enough. Aiden's breathing faltered. Caleb lowered his head. Dad's eyes locked on his son. Is this true? Aiden swallowed. Yes. The word fell into the room like a trigger. Mom's eyes filled instantly, not with anger but sorrow. She reached out, touching Aiden's knee as if she feared he might disappear. Why didn't you tell us? She whispered. Aiden blinked hard. Because I didn't think you'd understand. Mom's voice broke. We're your parents. It's our job to understand. Her words were warm, hopeful, but Dad's silence cut through them like cold steel. Is that boy? Dad nodded toward Caleb. Your boyfriend? Aiden hesitated. Yes, and no, we're trying. Dad nodded slowly, jaw clenching. I see. That was worse than yelling. Worse than anything. Mom wiped her eyes. Why now, Aiden? Why not when you were younger, when we could have helped you understand what you were feeling? Aiden stared at her. I didn't need help understanding myself, he whispered. I needed help feeling safe. Mom went still. Aiden continued, voice trembling. I've known for years. I didn't want to disappoint you. Mom's breath caught. You could never. Yes, I could. Aiden interrupted. Dad made that very clear. Dad's eyes flashed. What's that supposed to mean? Aiden's voice rose. That you've spent my whole life telling me who I was supposed to be. Strong, masculine, straight. And I tried, Dad. I really did. But I couldn't change myself. And when I finally found someone who made me feel normal, safe, you were ready to throw it away because you didn't approve. Dad stood abruptly. No shouting. Just movement, sharp, harsh. You don't know what I approve of, he said. You never gave me the chance. Aiden stood too, instinctively matching him. I didn't give you the chance because I was terrified of what you'd say. Because of me? Dad asked. He didn't sound offended. He sounded injured. Aiden's eyes softened. Because I love you, he said quietly. And I didn't want you to stop loving me. Dad blinked. For the first time, he looked unsure. Mom rose slowly and stepped between them, not as a shield, but as a bridge. Aiden, she whispered. We love you. That doesn't change. Aiden nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. But it might, he said. It could. Dad finally spoke again, softer. What do you want from us? Aiden's shoulders lowered. I want you to see me. All of me. Not who you hoped I'd be. Dad's posture loosened, just barely. And this boy? He asked, looking at Caleb. What is he to you? Aiden didn't hesitate this time. He's the first person I've ever felt safe with. He's the first person I've ever loved. Caleb's breath faltered, but he didn't look away. Instead, he stepped forward slightly. Sir, he said quietly. I would never hurt him. Dad studied him, long, intense, cold. Caleb didn't flinch. Mom turned to Aiden. You should have told us earlier, she said gently. We could have learned together. Aiden's mouth trembled. I'm telling you now, Dad exhaled. You're still our son. But the way he said it sounded like a statement of fact, not acceptance. Aiden nodded once, but I could see the disappointment flicker through him. Fast, but real. Mom reached for his hand. He let her hold it. Dad paced a small circle, thinking. When he stopped, his face was unreadable again. So, he said quietly, what now? Aiden's voice was small. I don't know. Silence again. A heavy one. Dad looked at Caleb. Do your parents know? Caleb froze. Then nodded. Yes. Dad nodded like that was a point in his favor. And they're fine with this? With you too? Caleb hesitated, but told the truth. They didn't take it well at first, but they tried. They're still trying. Dad processed that. Slowly. Carefully. I need time, he said finally. Aiden's face fell. But he nodded. Okay. Dad's gaze softened, almost imperceptibly. This isn't what I pictured for your life, he admitted. But it's still your life. Aiden swallowed hard. Does that mean you accept me? Dad didn't answer right away. When he did, his words were careful. It means I'm trying. Aiden closed his eyes. A single tear fell. That's all I wanted. Mom pulled him into a hug. He melted into her, shoulders shaking. Dad watched silently, hands clenched at his sides. When Mom released him, Dad stepped forward. He didn't hug him. Not yet. But he placed a hand on Aiden's shoulder, firm, grounding, unfamiliar. We'll figure this out, he said. Aiden nodded, overwhelmed. And you, Dad said, turning to Caleb. If you hurt him, Caleb nodded. I won't. Dad studied him for a long moment. Then nodded once. Mom took a shaky breath. We should all eat. It's been a long day. A small, fragile normalcy threaded through the room, as if dinner could stitch together what had been torn. For the first time, I believed it might be possible. But later that night, when the house went quiet, someone would break that peace again. The house feels different now. Not because the walls changed or because the furniture moved, but because the silence no longer carries fear. The softer, lighter, like it finally learned how to breathe. Aiden and I sit on the back porch, watching late spring settle over the yard. The air smells like lemon trees and cut grass. He's beside me, knees pulled up, wearing a loose t-shirt that used to be mine. His hair is longer now, curling slightly over his forehead. He doesn't bother brushing it anymore, and somehow it suits him better this way. He looks peaceful. Aiden laughs suddenly, soft and genuine, as his phone screen lights up with a message. Before I can ask, I already know who it's from. Caleb? Ask. He grins. He's picking me up later. His mom is making dinner. I nod. It's still strange hearing him talk about it so casually. A year ago, he could barely say the word love without choking on fear. Now, he speaks with quiet certainty, the kind that forms only after someone has shattered and rebuilt themselves. How are his parents doing? Ask. He thinks for a moment. Better, he says. They're learning, asking questions, sometimes awkward ones, but at least they're trying. Trying. The most underrated expression of love. And Mom and Dad? Ask. Aiden's face softens. It wasn't perfect after that night. There were days filled with anger, misunderstandings, silence. Dad spent months reading, researching, talking to parents who'd been through the same thing. Mom joined him in family therapy. They stumbled. Sometimes they said the wrong thing. Sometimes they didn't know what to say at all. But they stayed. And love stayed with them. They're better, Aiden finally says, his eyes unfocused slightly, remembering. Dad still asks too many questions, but he's trying. He's not hiding from it anymore. I smile. He's right. Dad isn't perfect. But no one expected perfection. Only honesty. Aiden leans back in his chair, hands folded above his stomach, eyes drifting upward. You know, he murmurs, I used to be terrified every time I heard Dad say my name. I thought it meant trouble, or disappointment. And now, Aiden says quietly, it feels like acceptance, like he's finally talking to me. Not the version of me he imagined, but me. I let those words settle. Sometimes healing doesn't arrive like lightning. Sometimes it's slow, steady, almost invisible, like a garden that grows even when no one is watching. A few weeks after that night, Aiden told Dad he was still scared. Dad surprised all of us. One day at a time, he'd said. He meant it. When Aiden introduced Caleb properly, Dad treated him like any other guest, gruff and cautious but not dismissive. Later, when he saw them holding hands, he didn't look away. He just breathed through it, and that was enough. One night, months later, Dad approached Aiden, awkward, struggling for words. I don't always understand, he said, but I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. Aiden cried harder than he had the night he came out. Now, on the porch, he wipes his cheek as though brushing away a memory. You know what's funny? He asks. What? After everything I thought life would get harder, but it didn't. It just got clearer. He laughs again. I guess it turns out the only part breaking me was the fear. I smile. You were never broken. Aiden nudges my shoulder. Maybe not, but I definitely needed help getting put together. He stands and stretches, sunlight catching his smile. I used to wonder why I was born a twin, he says. Now I think I know. Why's that? Ask. So I'd never have to face the world alone. My throat tightens. He means it. And I feel it. Before I can answer, the back door slides open. Dad steps out, wiping his hands on a towel. He's older now, or maybe I only notice it because we've finally seen him vulnerable. The hardness in his eyes is still there, but it's softened by something warmer beneath. Dinner's ready, he says. Aiden nods. I'm going out with Caleb later. Dad pauses, just a split second, then smiles. Tell him I said hello. Aiden beams. Will do. None of us acknowledge how big that sentence is. We just let it be. Inside, Mom is lighting candles on the table, humming to herself. When Aiden steps in, she hugs him without hesitation. He leans into her easily, like he's relearning what safety feels like. After dinner, Aiden leaves to meet Caleb. Dad watches from the doorway as the two walk toward the car, hands brushing, subtle but undeniable. Dad calls out, voice steady. "Drive safe." Caleb nods. "Yes, sir." Dad doesn't flinch at the sir. He just watches until the car disappears down the road. Later, I find Dad in the living room. He's reading again, another book with sticky notes poking out. He looks up when I sit across from him. "You doing okay?" ask. He thinks about it, then nods. "Better than I was. Still learning. That's all anyone can do." He studies the pages and speaks without looking up. "Thank you." "For what?" "For being there for him," he says quietly. "When I couldn't." I breathe in slowly. "He needed you more than anyone." Dad's face tightens. "I know," he says. "I'm trying to make up for that." "You are." He finally meets my eyes. "Some things take longer to understand," he says. "But I don't want to lose my son over the time it took me." "You won't," I tell him. He nods, as though convincing himself it's true. Late that night, Aiden slips back into our room. He looks happy, flushed with something too soft to label. "How was dinner?" ask. He grins. "Real. Comfortable." He kicks off his shoes and lies back on his bed, staring at the ceiling. "You ever feel like you're finally living the version of life you always imagined, but were too scared to hope for?" "Yeah," I whisper. "I think I'm watching it happen to you." Aiden laughs softly. Then his voice drops to a gentle murmur. "I'm not hiding anymore," he says. And it feels like breathing for the first time. I close my eyes. And somewhere inside the dark, a quiet peace settles. Not because everything is perfect, but because everything is honest. Because love, even when late, even when flawed, even when uncertain, arrived and stayed.